Most people believe that all debt is bad. They're taught to fear it, to avoid it, to pay it off as fast as possible and never look back. And for a lot of people, that advice makes sense, because the wrong kind of debt has destroyed millions of lives. But here's what nobody tells you. The wealthy don't fear debt. They use it. In fact, some of the richest people on the planet are drowning in debt on purpose, and it's making them richer every single day. So how can debt destroy one person and build a fortune for another? Because there are actually two completely different kinds of debt, and they work in opposite directions. One quietly drags you deeper into a hole for the rest of your life. The other is a tool that the rich use to multiply their money. And once you can tell the difference, you'll understand one of the biggest secrets that separates the wealthy from everyone else. So today, we're breaking down the debt that makes you poor versus the debt that makes you rich. Welcome to Wealth Decoded. Let's start with the one simple idea that explains everything. The difference between good debt and bad debt comes down to a single question. Does this debt put money into your pocket, or does it take money out? That's it. That's the whole test. Bad debt takes money out of your pocket every month and gives you nothing that grows in return. Good debt puts money into your pocket or buys you something that grows in value over time. The exact same tool, borrowed money, can either be a trap that enslaves you or a lever that lifts you up. It all depends on what you do with it. Most people only ever experience the first kind, so they conclude that all debt is evil. But the wealthy have learned to use the second kind as one of the most powerful wealth-building tools that exists. So let's break down both, starting with the kind that's quietly keeping millions of people poor. First, let's talk about bad debt, the kind that makes you poor. Bad debt is money you borrow to buy things that lose value or produce nothing. It's debt used for consumption, not creation. And the classic example, the king of bad debt, is credit card debt. Here's how the trap works. You want something now, but you don't have the money. So you put it on a card. It feels painless because you didn't hand over any cash. But that purchase now starts charging you interest, often at rates of 20, 25, even 30% a year. Think about how insane that is. If you carry a balance, you might end up paying nearly double for everything you buy. That dinner, that gadget, those clothes, they don't just cost what the price tag said. They cost that, plus years of interest for something that's already gone or worn out. And here's the cruelest part. While you're paying that interest, the thing you bought is losing value or disappearing entirely. You're paying more and more for something worth less and less. Car loans often fall into this category too. The moment you drive a new car off the lot, it loses a huge chunk of its value, and yet you keep making payments on it for years, with interest, on an asset that's shrinking the entire time. Think about that combination for a second. The value is going down, while your total cost, thanks to interest, is going up. You're moving in two wrong directions at once, and people do this over and over, trading in one shrinking, financed car for a newer, more expensive one, staying trapped in a permanent car payment for their entire adult life, never realizing how much wealth quietly leaked out through that one habit alone. Then there's borrowing for vacations, gadgets, designer clothes, all the things that feel good today, but leave you with a bill tomorrow. This is the debt that quietly enslaves people. Every month, a piece of your paycheck is already spoken for, sent straight to a lender, before you can spend it on your own life. You're not working for yourself anymore. You're working for the bank. And the more bad debt you take on, the more of your future income is chained to your past decisions. And here's the psychological trap that makes it so dangerous. Bad debt lets you feel rich today, while guaranteeing you'll be poor tomorrow. It hands you the lifestyle of someone wealthy, the car, the gadgets, the trips, before you've actually built any wealth to support it. So you look successful on the outside, while quietly sinking on the inside. This is why so many people who appear to have it all are actually one emergency away from falling apart. They didn't buy those things. They rented them from a lender, and they're still paying the bill long after the excitement wore off. Let me show you just how brutal this can be. Imagine someone with $10,000 in credit card debt at a 24% interest rate, making only the minimum payments. It could take them well over a decade to pay it off, and they might end up paying thousands and thousands of dollars in interest alone, far more than they originally borrowed. That's years of their life and a small fortune handed over to a lender for purchases they probably forgot about long ago. This is how bad debt works. It takes your future and spends it today, then charges you a brutal fee for the privilege. It's a machine designed to transfer money from people who don't understand it to people who do, and most people never even realize they're feeding it. So the first rule of the wealthy is simple. They avoid bad debt like the plague. They almost never borrow to consume. But that doesn't mean they avoid debt altogether. Far from it, because they've discovered the other side of the coin. Now, before we get into good debt, which is where this gets exciting, do us a quick favor. If you're learning something here, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell. We decode how money really works every single week. All right, let's talk about the debt that makes you rich. Good debt is money you borrow to buy things that put money in your pocket or grow in value over time. Instead of borrowing to consume, you're borrowing to acquire assets. And this completely flips the game. Let me give you the clearest example. Imagine you want to buy a rental property that costs $200,000. Most people don't have that kind of cash lying around. So you go to the bank, put down a fraction, say $40,000, and borrow the rest. Now, to most people that sounds terrifying. $160,000 in debt. But watch what actually happens. You rent out that property, and the tenant pays you rent every month. That rent covers the loan payment, covers the expenses, and still leaves extra money in your pocket. So the debt isn't costing you anything. Someone else, your tenant, is paying it off for you. And here's where it gets beautiful. While your tenant slowly pays down your loan, the property itself is rising in value. So you controlled a $200,000 asset by putting in only $40,000 of your own money, and both the loan is being paid by someone else, and the asset is growing. Let me slow down and really let that sink in, because it's the whole game. You put in $40,000. The bank put in $160,000, but you own 100% of the property and 100% of its growth. The bank doesn't get a share of the profits. They just get their interest back. Slowly, paid by your tenant, not by you. So you used a small amount of your own money to capture the gains of an asset 5 times bigger, while someone else handled the payments. Now imagine that property rises in value by $100,000 over the years. You didn't invest $100,000 to get that. You invested $40,000. So on your actual money, you more than doubled it. And that's before counting all the rent you collected along the way. That is the power of good debt. It let you control something far bigger than you could ever afford on your own, and it turned other people's money into your wealth. This is called leverage, and it's the real secret weapon of the wealthy. Leverage means using a small amount of your own money, plus borrowed money, to control a much larger asset. Think about it this way. Without leverage, if you had $40,000, you could only buy $40,000 worth of stuff. But with good debt, that same $40,000 let you control a $200,000 asset. So when that asset grows by 10%, you don't earn 10% on $40,000. You earn 10% on the entire $200,000. Your returns are multiplied because you're earning on the whole asset. not just the small piece you paid for. This is exactly how real estate empires are built. An investor buys one property with leverage, lets the tenants pay it down, and the value rise, then uses that growing equity to borrow again and buy the next property, and the next, and the next, each one controlled with a small slice of their own money, each one paid down by tenants, each one growing in value. This is the part that quietly blows people's minds. A person with, say, $100,000 in cash has two choices. They could buy one small property outright and own it free and clear. Or they could split that same $100,000 across several properties, using good debt on each, and suddenly control 4, 5, even more properties, worth many times more in total. Both people started with the same amount, but years later, the one who used leverage wisely has a portfolio several times larger, with tenants paying down every loan and every property climbing in value at once. That's how someone can turn a modest starting amount into a portfolio worth millions over time. They didn't have millions to begin with. They used good debt to control millions. But good debt isn't only about real estate. Businesses use it too, and it's one of the main engines of how they grow. A smart business owner might borrow money to buy equipment that lets them produce more, or to open a second location, or to hire a team that generates far more revenue than the loan costs. If you borrow at, say, 8%, but that borrowed money helps you earn 20%, you just made a healthy profit using money that wasn't even yours. That gap between what the debt costs you and what it earns you is pure wealth creation. The loan didn't make you poorer, it made you richer because you put it to work. Let me give you a simple business picture. Imagine you run a small bakery and you're selling out of bread every single day, turning customers away because you can't make enough. You borrow money to buy a second oven. That oven costs you a loan payment, sure, but now you can bake twice as much, sell twice as much, and the extra profit is far bigger than the payment. The debt didn't drain you. It unlocked income you literally could not have reached without it. That's good debt in action. The borrowed money bought a machine that prints more money than it costs. This is why growing businesses almost always use debt. Waiting years to save up for every piece of equipment would mean missing years of profit. Smart, controlled borrowing lets them grow now, and pay for it with the very income that growth creates. Even education, when it's chosen wisely, can act like good debt if it dramatically increases your ability to earn far beyond what it cost. The principle is always the same. If the thing you borrowed for earns you more than the debt costs, it's good debt. If it just drains you every month and gives nothing back, it's bad debt. So here's the crucial mindset shift that separates the wealthy from everyone else. Most people ask, how do I get out of all debt? The wealthy ask a completely different question. How do I use debt to buy assets that make me richer? They're not reckless. They don't borrow blindly. In fact, they're often more careful and calculated than anyone because they respect exactly how powerful this tool is. They know that leverage cuts both ways. Just as it can multiply your gains, it can multiply your losses if you use it on the wrong things or take on more than an asset can support. So they follow a few simple rules. They only borrow to buy assets that produce income or reliably grow. They make sure the asset itself can cover the debt payments, like a rental where the rent pays the mortgage. And they never over-leverage to the point where one bad month could wipe them out. This is the part beginners always miss, so let me be very clear about it. Leverage is powerful precisely because it magnifies whatever you point it at. Point it at a solid, income-producing asset, and it magnifies your wealth. Point it at a shiny liability that just loses value, and it magnifies your losses and your stress. It's like fire. In the right hands, fire cooks your food and heats your home. In the wrong hands, it burns the whole house down. Same fire. The tool was never the problem. The wisdom of the person using it is what decides the outcome. That's why the wealthy treat good debt with deep respect, not fear. They know exactly what it can do in both directions. Used with discipline, good debt is like a magnifying glass for your money. Used carelessly or on the wrong things, debt of any kind becomes a trap. The difference isn't the debt itself, it's the wisdom of the person using it. So let's bring it all together. All debt is not created equal. Bad debt is borrowing to buy things that lose value or produce nothing, like credit cards, car loans, and financing a lifestyle you can't afford. It takes money out of your pocket, chains your future income to the bank, and quietly keeps you poor. Good debt is borrowing to buy assets that put money in your pocket or grow in value, like rental properties, business investments, and other income-producing assets. It uses other people's money to build your wealth, and it's one of the most powerful tools the rich have ever used. The poor and middle class are taught to fear all debt, so they either drown in the bad kind or avoid debt entirely and miss the good kind. The wealthy learn to run from bad debt and embrace good debt, and that single distinction quietly makes all the difference over a lifetime. So the goal was never to avoid debt completely. The goal is to become the kind of person who knows the difference, who ruthlessly cuts out the debt that drains them and intelligently uses the debt that builds them. And here's a simple way to check yourself every time you're about to borrow. Just ask that one question from the beginning. Is this going to put money into my pocket or take money out? If it puts money in or buys something that will clearly grow, it might be good debt worth considering carefully. If it takes money out to buy something that shrinks or disappears, it's bad debt, and it's quietly working against your future. That single question, asked honestly before every purchase, would change more financial lives than almost any other habit. Master that one idea, and you've unlocked a tool that can literally multiply everything you touch. Thanks for spending some time with us today. If this changed how you think about debt, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss the next one. We'll see you back here next time.